Hello, and
Hello.
having a nice drink. Perfect timing.
Yeah, good job.
Hello, everyone. We're back with another live stream this week where we're going to talk about the world of Hunt, and we got 3 new guests sitting here. And obviously, we have the same segments as we had last time. We're going to talk a little bit about the level design and some other stuff, audio design. And then we're going to take a look at the editor again, and then we're going to do some gameplay and then some Q&A. I do want to ask to keep the Q&A a little bit more focused on the world of Hunt and less general questions, because usually we already answered these in previous live streams, so make sure you check those. And we're going to have an updated FAQ soon on the Discord and Steam. So, who do we have here today? Well, let's start on the left.
I'm not new. I was on a previous stream. 2 new people.
Maybe they weren't there.
Thank you for remembering.
Know,
It seems that my presence was very memorable last time. So, I'm CJ. I'm the level design director, and you might remember me as the guy who team kills too much with concertina wires from the last couple of streams. Yeah, that's it.
My name is Marcel. I'm the lead artist of the Project Hunt. It's my first time here in the stream. I'm looking forward to it, so be nice, please.
So don't fuck it up.
I won't. No.
And I'm Flo. I'm the audio director at Crytek and also responsible for the soundscape of Hunt.
Awesome. And what are you guys planning to talk about today? Because we have some things prepared.
We're going to talk about the world. When we say world, we basically mean like the level and everything around it and all of the things that basically flavored our look and our sound design. And we brought you a couple of pictures to look at, so that you have something to see while we're talking, because we're probably giving you a lot of information about stuff.
And then after that, we're going to basically transition across looking at the editor itself. We're going to do a bit of a fly around in that, give you some background about what goes into a level for Hunt, what goes into the design behind it, a bit of talking about some of the replayability, some of the other structures and things like that. We'll also give you a quick glimpse of the time of day. I know that was something that came up a lot in previous streams and everyone wanted to take a look at that, so you'll get a glimpse about that. And then play the game a bit.
Exactly, and you're gonna do better than last time?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's a new duo combination, so who knows? Like,
Yeah, I know. I mean, last time it was just a case of trying to kill Magnus at any cost.
It was
always fun
it
to-
was very it was really fun to watch. Like, especially the concertina bomb. Like,
Legendary.
Perfect.
Legendary.
but yeah, let's take a look at some of the images.
Yeah, as you can see on the first picture here, you already see a couple of light bulbs and stuff like that, which is basically describing our era pretty precisely. We're in the Gilded Age. It's basically the end of the 19th century, which is a pretty good spot to be in, because you have access to not only the old school vintage kind of stuff that we all like, but you're also like at the edge of the modern world, which gives you a lot of possibilities when it comes to cooler features, mechanical things, even electricity, which is basically here represented by the light bulb. That's something that we use a lot. You have seen it like last week when we talked about the weapon already. It's basically the same way for the environments as well. We have a lot of the old stuff. Whatever is kind of in the prototype state now is also something that we can use. This is something that we're really excited about.
And just a quick question. I know that some people were like, "What? How did you guys get inspired to choose this like setting, or was it just purely because of the previous concept?" Or?
Pretty much, yes. The setting has not really changed ever since we got the project assigned. And we were a big fan of the time and era from the first day on. We just had to modify the project a little bit here and there to basically tailor it around the strength of the development team, because the team that used to work on that one had a different taste and they just built things different in the past, and it was not perfectly suiting our team. So the setting has always been the same, and we were a big fan of it. We just basically turned it more into a mature experience, something more grown up. It was fairly stylized before, which is not the case anymore. So the time and era is, as we said, basically the end of the 19th century, and there's a location that we also like, which is Louisiana. We all know that. Rick, would you be so nice, please?
Oh, and just to piggyback on this, so the Gilded Age is also, for sound design, it's always awesome to have, let's say, steampunk, because it gives you basically all the full palette of audio. You can draw from steam, electricity, mechanical stuff, gritty
You
elements.
can dip into the supernatural as well.
And you can
Yeah.
even dip into the supernatural. So we are not steampunk in that matter, but the Gilded Age gives us exactly the mechanical era with, let's say, big machinery, steam, the iron and really, let's say, big moving elements. And at the same time, it's already electricity, so we can dip into that, let's say, supernatural part where we be a little bit more mystic. And that kind of nicely works together if you combine both palettes.
If I remember right, it was mentioned in one of the first streams we did that when we talk about things like Gilded Age, we're not the kind of traditional high detail, super shiny, gold plated, all that kind of stuff. It's much more of a darker, nastier, shittier experience, right? We want to be down in the dirt, and it's not that, the silversmith, toiling over his little angular details each time and carving in little intricate swords and stuff. It's much more hardcore, it's much more brutal.
Yeah, as you can see in the picture, it is in the swamps of Louisiana, obviously, and we're trying to aim for something more realistic, as I mentioned already. So from an art direction point of view, we call it dark realism. So everything is grounded in reality. All of the references that we gather for our world, when it comes to the architecture, the nature, we always try to be as close to realism as possible. So for the nature, we even went into the woods and 3D scanned everything just to make sure it's as realistic as possible. And unlike reality, we do have this special twist, which makes it the dark realism, which is the darkness in our world, the evil, which basically flavors every single visual and even acoustic element of the game with to get something special. If you could you do the next one, please? Yeah, here's a couple of more natural references. I mentioned that we are in Louisiana, but it might sound like it's not that much. But if you think about it and if you look at the references, Louisiana is very diverse when it comes to the locations that you could.
Not just swamps. Right?
It's not just swamps exactly. We do have very open farmlands and deep swamps and open swamps, and sometimes there's just a lot of water, and sometimes you're cramped into very narrow trees and deep forests. There's a lot that we can use to flavor our gameplay styles. Every corner in this big map that we're building is using a different a theme that we pick from Louisiana, basically.
And that really helped us as well as you went along with developing the map, that you have, let's say, more areas which are like villages, for example, and then you have open plains, and that's also very interesting because from an acoustic point of view, it's nice that we can start to make them sound different. And then of course you have the swamp stuff, which I think really feeds into this dark realism and grittiness as well, because it really stings in that swamp and it's hot and humid and all these things. I really like to to bring to life as well.
But we also have the different soundscapes as well for the different time of the days. Maybe you'll see that a bit today, which is quite nice, and we can vary between those, and it works out pretty nice. You get the kind of super hot buzzing insects in the Louisiana gold, and then in the deep dark swamp you just have this kind of really slightly depressing mosquito low rumble stuff.
Yeah.
Has anyone actually been to Louisiana from one of you guys?
The restaurant. There's a restaurant, yeah, that's cool. No, been there, but no.
Not in the swamp.
I mean, do you want to? I mean, now it would be cool to see something.
Yeah, of course,
in
definitely,
LA.
yeah. Luckily, or maybe.
You have to make a challenge out of it,
Of course, exactly.
The 10 million subscriber or something.
Well, you can spend a day in the swamp, basically.
One of us is going to
Exactly.
be eaten by crocodiles.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's gonna be
fully
different
dressed
things.
up as well as a hunter.
Rick, next picture,
We should
please.
definitely do that.
Yeah, this picture is a good one because it describes something that is at the core of the game. As you already know, we're trying to create a constant a feeling of unease and fear of loss, because we have this kind of sort of permadeath system in the game where when you die you lose a lot of your progress, and this is something that needs to be supported by the visuals as well. We want to serve the game as the art department, and when we build the environments, we have to make sure that we don't expose everything at once. We want to create those dark pockets in the level we want to create this harsh contrast. So whenever you enter an interior space like this, you really feel like you don't know what's behind the next corner. You really have to be careful. You really fear the unease. You feel the unease, and you really fear that you lose all of your gear when you make a wrong step. Not everything in the level is up to that quality yet. This is something we're constantly are building on. So whenever we play the game and you feel like this is not in there yet, it doesn't mean it's not going to be in there. We're really working hard to get to that point, that all of the interiors and all of the exterior spaces do have that harsh contrast, that harsh lighting, and basically support those core gameplay mechanics and the core emotions that we want to get across in the game. And that also basically influences the sound as well, that there's like things that might sound like other players and so on, right?
Well, it does. The concept was that we want to, like in the real world, every sound you hear is actually, someone must make that sound to be in the world. And so in previous games, we faked a lot, right? So there were a lot of, let's say, things happening offside and you couldn't really tell. And it was more like a flavor or something to spice up the soundscape. In this case, it's really that everything you hear in the world has a real emitter. So, for example, like if I don't know, someone, walks across a dog cage and they start barking, for example, then it's actually really someone triggered those. It's not just an ambient thing to bring up the tension, but it has no meaning. It actually has a meaning.
I think as a player, you have to be able to tell that it's something that has a source rather than something that was just an arbitrary sound. Because if you can't tell the difference between something that's just a random sound effect that was just put there aesthetically and doesn't have an actual source, how can you see whether that's something generated by a player or vice versa, or an AI or something like that?
Well, and in fairness, in a let's say single player experience, that it's totally fine because we want to rise the tension, keep the player on their toes. But in a multiplayer game, it can mislead also in regards to information that you think like it's not going to work.
Do we still have that like a sound cue that happens whenever you enter a new zone?
Yes, for example.
That threw me personally off
Really?
because I was like, wait, what did I do or what happened? What did someone do? Because I'm so focused on like what other players' sound is like.
Well, if you enter, so we have a so-called donut around the compound. So if you enter it, we use a low rumble to rise in the tension, but not getting in the way of other sounds, and that works quite well. And the indoor-outdoor stuff as well, as you mentioned. Like, if you really enter a hut, then the soundscape completely changes. All the gunshots sound different. You have this more clumsy feeling of like, okay, now I'm inside a space and I have to really maneuver differently as well than traversing open field.
And with that stuff as well, when it comes to the audio, the layout, the level design, and the art altogether, the point of that is we want to build up this high tension. That's where all of that is going to. That's where all the atmospherics are going towards, where all the audio is going towards, where all the layout changes, and the tells from AI, the tells from other players, even little things like little lights inside buildings. If a player turns that on or off, it's something that will give away positions and stuff. So everything that we do has to have the purpose of tying into that high tension. Right? It's the most critical thing in our game at the moment.
Yeah, if we look at the next picture, is basically describing, like when I said we have this special twist when it comes to realism and the darkness that basically creeps into our world, basically. The picture represents it quite nicely because we want to create a world that basically looks like all of the order that was once there turned into chaos. All of the life that was once there is now death. And people just stopped maintaining things. Everything aged and weathered. All of the materials basically describe what has happened in the past. And also all of the shapes, they're crooked. Nothing is straight anymore. Everything is sinking down into the ground. And really kind of the world shows in every single detail of the world. Basically, this is actually what we want to achieve with it. It supports the overall direction that we want to take this game to.
I think that there was a quote from our creative director about that he said that he wanted the entire world to bring the aroma of someone who has poured piss onto a sauna hot stone. Like that's the kind of the most horrible, visceral, disgusting kind of picture you can get in your head about this world. But it works, right? This is not a pretty place to be. This needs to feel like just a disgusting and horrible, offensive, unpleasant place to be.
Mr. Rick, Thank you. Yeah, and even like the darkness and the evil is kind of represented in the environment as well, not only by monsters, but all of those monsters that basically are in the environment, they leave their mark visually as well. We do have the hives, like in the top picture that you can see. This is where they build their nests, this is where they grow, this is where they come out of, and it might sometimes be a lot of that stuff, sometimes it's just less of it, but you will notice it. When you look close at the environment, you will see that something is off, something is twisted, and it's not as it should be. And the bottom picture I really like because it really shows off the unknown of the environment.
Mhm.
I see the tunnel ahead of me, but there's so many dark pockets in it. If I would enter that thing, like that tunnel, with my buddy, I have my gear up and I have a lot to lose, I would be really scared to walk down that road if I know that something is hiding in there and I can already hear the zombies crawling in the background, but I cannot see them yet. I think this is really describing the how effective the environment can tie into
Yeah.
the direction,
paranoia of it as
the
well.
paranoia of it,
Mhm.
exactly. That stuff is really important. And
Like it could be a player, it could be an AI, it could be a boss, it could be none of those. It could just be a space that's just a dark and empty space you don't know. And we want to build up that even from a game design side and from the level side. We also try to add a lot of randomization within these kind of things, like
Mhm.
what can spawn, what kind of weather effects might be happening, or different lighting effects and other stuff like this that actually go into the level, entry points and other stuff. We'll cover this a bit more when we look at it in the level, but there's a lot of randomization that goes in there, which hopefully means that these things won't feel quite the same each time.
Yeah, I remember whenever I was playing against a spider, and especially because the spider moves around a lot, like you don't know where it's coming from. You're just looking around and you hear
Yeah.
sounds, but you don't see it. It's like you panic like completely. Like it's a really, really creepy experience.
Yeah.
Like it definitely adds. It says because if you always see the boss, like you register, it's like okay, we know where it is, it's fine. But
Yeah.
whenever it's like somewhere in the building, but you don't know why, but you hear it, it's like oh.
And we've had it again in the past when playtesting, like time and time again, where players have assumed that there wasn't a boss in this location. They've gone through the clues, they've gone through the process, they thought it wasn't here, and it turns out it was here. They were wrong, and they didn't know. And then they're just in there looking around for ammo, resupply, loot, whatever, just moving around. And suddenly this spider is just up on the ceiling waiting. And they didn't even know it was there.
creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so in a nutshell, basically, we do have that world, the dark realism, the feel of unease, fear of loss, and the dirty corners of the world is basically our umbrella that all of the visuals and all of the audio gets flavored by. And when we look at the big map, Rick, you see that it is actually full. That's like an abstract view of our map. There's a lot of locations that are basically flavored by that visual and audio direction. There's something that you can talk about. A little
Yeah,
bit,
well, I mean, we'll cover this a bit in a second. I'll go through the rules in detail about what defines a POI versus a compound. I mean, essentially, a POI is a sort of a larger compound. It's a space that has a greater challenge but a greater reward. There are a little bit more landmarks in there, a bit more kind of custom geometry and custom locations and stuff. But essentially, to summarize the level of hunt, what we have is a 1 square kilometer map. And in that 1 square K, we have about 15 or 16 different locations, and we call them compounds, we call them POIs. There's 3 POIs and about 12 compounds, something like that. Within those, when you're out and you're looking for clues, you'll find maybe 1, maybe 2 clues in the compounds at the moment. So I think it's only 1 right now. In the POIs, you can go in there will always be 2 or 3, but the challenge will be greater. The bosses themselves and the targets that you're tracking can spawn at any one of those locations, and sometimes within those locations we spawn multiple bosses, so there could be 2 or 3 different spawn points in each one of those places, and you never know which one it's going to be. So when you play a match of hunt, they could be anywhere. It's not just a case of there's 15 locations where a boss could spawn. There's quite a bit more than that, because it's possible to have multiple locations within each area as well. So that's again part of the unknown. It's a part of unpredictability and replayability. We just want you to go out there and find this stuff. We don't want it to be something that you just run in all the time. You kind of know where this guy's going to be. It has to be randomized. It has to be unknown, and it has to be different. So
Yeah, could you open up the next one, Rick? Thank you.
I'm just curious, by the way,
Yeah.
what is your guys' favorite compound?
I would be biased because I made a couple of them.
That's an unfair
That's
question.
fine. I mean, you can still be biased. Like, what are you most proud of? Like, yeah, that doesn't matter. Like,
It's really hard to say. I mean, they all are like different, and sometimes when you work on a compound for a long time, then you kind of lose the feeling of how well it actually works to other players. But then when you again watch other people play it, you get a different perspective, and then again you suddenly feel like it's like a really good one. But in general, I prefer the ones more that I did not work on, because I do feel the unknown a lot more when I.
It's fresher.
Yeah,
exactly.
true.
When I wasn't actually working on it.
Yeah,
So
if you worked on it, you know where things spawn, you know where the placement of stuff is, you know all the secrets behind it, and when you play it, it's like, okay, well, I know what's coming, right? I mean, one of the ones I like the most is, I don't know if we've seen it in the streams, probably have, but we have this fishing village, which is, I like it because it's a very, very different location to some of the ones that
with
we
all
currently
the
have.
ladders, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like this village, very, very dense, raised up. It's almost like this kind of slummy, nasty kind of elevated village, lots of different huts and buildings and stuff, and it can be a bit maze-like, but it really adds to the kind of the unknown. It's like there's a lot of places to look, there's a lot of places other players and AI and stuff can be, and I dread going into it, but not in a bad way. I dread going into it always because I have to cover a lot of places. I have to think exactly where I'm going, and I think that one is a really interesting location to run through. I think it's one of the more tense that we have.
I was in a location once with a daylight map, and that was really fun because it has a lot of different places people can hide, so you don't exactly know where people are.
Well, I mean, with the time of days, I mean, the daylight one we're going to look at a bit today is, I mean, one question is always like, how do you make daytime or brighter time of days as equally creepy to nighttime? And we still put a lot of effort into making things like the interiors darker, more tense, more difficult to see. And bright doesn't necessarily mean that you see everything. Bright doesn't necessarily mean that everything is revealed. But we'll look at that a little bit more closely in a bit.
Yeah, well, if you remember that, well, a little bit earlier I said that we do have, that Louisiana is quite diverse when it comes to the locations. This is a good example of how we use those spaces and those themes in order to create different gameplay scenarios. This is just one example. It's basically a top-down paper design for one of the little corners in our maps. And you can clearly see that the placement of the vegetation, the theme really does affect the way you play the game a lot. It creates other challenges, like a bayou in this case, creates a totally different challenge than an open field with an oak tree in the middle. And if you go to the next one, Rick, please. This one is more of a farmland one. You see that you have denser forests and more open areas. The contrast between open and dense is a lot higher, which means different gameplay scenarios and so on.
We have a lot of risk versus reward, we call it in this one, where if you have an open field, going across that directly will save you a lot of time, but you're obviously going to be very exposed. People are going to see your silhouettes, they're going to see you moving, they're going to see that little speck kind of running across the field. They know it's a player, they're immediately going to go there, but we have the perimeter with sort of fences and bushes and trees and stuff like that, so maybe it makes sense for you to kind of sneak around that and take a bit more time, but you're going to be more protected, but it'll be slower. So there's all these kinds of little tactical advantages and disadvantages of using these spaces.
Exactly. Rick, thank you. Yeah, this is another top-down view of how we basically feedback on our compounds and POIs and how to get that mindset of basically amplifying the theme. We do that a lot. We get a lot of sketches from our concept artists and art directors, and they help us to basically look at those environments from a different perspective, and they can often help us out to flesh out things a little bit more and get more order into it. And those kind of overpaints are really helpful, and we do use them a lot. Yeah. If in the last slide, we basically come even closer to one of our parts of the map. This is something that we're going to look at in the editor later on. It basically also shows a lot of how we basically try to shape the environments.
This is also my favorite.
The church?
Compound. I think it's really well done.
Oh, you like it so much?
I don't know. I think it's
because I paid him €10.
Yeah.
Oh, it's your compound.
No, I think it took quite a long time to get there, and it's been going on. But I really like that there's the grave section, which is like really, you have these kind of corridor type feel, but it's still outside, and then you have this interior and churches well, audio and churches are
Oh,
friends
yeah.
I
because
think
it's
this
different
was-
reverb and,
Yeah, yeah.
This
and you
was-
have a bell as well, right?
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
control with bells.
Yeah.
I mean, this one was, I definitely think, one of the longest in production that we had on this level. I mean, we started, I think, with this one, and it's been iterated on so many times that we've rebuilt areas of this just endlessly back and forth, rebuilding. I think that this image is a good example of how we have to marry gameplay and art together to make the space feel like a real location whilst also supporting the kind of locations that we need.
Yeah, remember the first takes of that one
Yeah.
when we thought that like the grave theme was really cool,
Yeah.
and we had a lot of tombstones and it was really good, but it was a maze.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
remember it really felt awesome and looked awesome, but
Mm.
sometimes when you heard other players, it was like
Yeah.
it was this big maze and you had no idea how to get to them.
It was like hearing echoes in a labyrinth. Like
Yeah,
you could hear
exactly.
someone is in here, but trying to find them again it was impossible. So we stripped a lot of that back.
And I mean, the picture shows it at least a little bit. There's open areas like that little lake and the courtyard, and that maze part that you see on the bottom left only makes up a smaller part of the POI now.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of all of the iterations. I mean, we play the game a lot and try to kind of make it better, at least.
I mean, I would say also a big part with this one is that when we had previous iterations of this location, just as an example, is that from a player's perspective, it's also quite difficult to memorize where you've been, where you need to go. If everything is kind of more the same,
Yeah.
you notice in this one you've got like a lot of density in one area, you've got more open in another, we've got water in one corner, we've got this and this and this. So as a player, I have these micro landmarks in my head, and I can kind of remember the relationship of where I've been, where I'm going, and it helps to just kind of give you a bit of orientation as well.
Well, and communication, right? So you can actually point out,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
and that was one of the big
I'm
issues.
by the grave.
by the
Yeah,
okay.
next to
which
the
one?
tombstone,
Which
Which
one?
grave are you?
Uh,
By the green.
Nice.
okay.
So I think we're gonna take a look at the editor. So we're gonna do a short break, get them behind the PCs, and then we have CJ and Marcel that are also gonna,
Mostly CJ.
mostly CJ, that are gonna do it, and then some play session, and then Q&A. Remember, keep the questions World of Hunt related if you can, and we'll be back in a little bit.
See you later.
There.
Okay.
Hi there, we're back, and we're going to be looking at, so we have POI and a compound to show you, so we're going to be looking at some stuff in the editor. What you're seeing here is basically the same image that we looked at just a second ago. So this is a top-down of one of our larger areas of the level. This is what we call a POI. This is called Healing Waters Church. It's basically right in the center of the level. You've probably seen this if you've seen the playthroughs. We've been through this a few times. It's kind of one of the more frequently traveled locations. One of the locations we spent a little bit more time on versus the others. And I'll give you a bit of an overview about how we build this stuff and how we structure these things in Hunt and why is it relevant? Why do we design things in the way that we do? So in Hunt, we have these larger zones, and the goal with these is we need to be able to spawn these targets in the level. We need to be able to give you a position where, we have a couple of locations for the butcher, for the spider, for future bosses, for other things that we might want to come in, we might want to hunt later. And what we usually start with is a theme. We try to think of, okay, what kind of a cool location do we want to have? What kind of a theme in general? Like, is it a church? Is it a barn? Is it a train station? Is it a mine? Like, what is the kind of theme going on here? From that, we need to basically identify things like, how do we get those targets into this space? Where are we going to be fighting them? Are they going to be in a building? Are they going to be out in the open? Are they going to be underground? This kind of stuff. So generally speaking, from a rule point of view in Hunt, we like to have that bosses in a contained space. It just makes a bit more sense for us when we're building it. It's easier to contain, it's easier for people to fight, and things like the spider needs ceilings. He needs to walk on the roof. He needs to have places to hide, places to kind of creep and wait for you, and underground areas are always good for him, nice and dark and creepy and wet and things like that. So in this case, we started off with a cemetery. So this is a major church in the area. It's got a lot of gravestones in there. It's got a big structure in the center, which is obviously the church itself. And that's kind of where we started. So we placed that in, and we started thinking about, okay, what are the kind of rules we need here to have a boss space in a PvE and a PvP environment? Because those are two challenges that are actually quite difficult to balance out. I mean, if you're going in, you're fighting AI, and there are other players in the area, we have to consider both of those things.
It was even one of the first settings that we picked, right? Because we
was,
really
yeah.
loved like Louisiana has a very specific look when it comes to cemeteries, and we fell in love with that kind of visuals.
Yeah.
Those very typical southern
Those
cemetery.
big white churches and those kind of graves and stuff, like the tall, I don't know what you call them, they're just crypts or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you mentioned before, we went through a lot of iterations because obviously you need to figure out what works best for the game, but that one specifically has been there for a long time, and really means a lot to us.
Yeah, we
Even
did
though-
a lot on this one. So I'm going to start with this top down, and I'm going to switch now basically to the editor, so you can see that it mirrors it pretty closely. So obviously there's some things we go back and forth with, and we kind of look at, okay, so maybe we need to adjust this is better for gameplay and whatnot. But the goal of this was to try to marry the believability of this layout with a gameplay space that really worked for Hunt. Let's talk quickly, before I go into the detail about the layout, about the differences between a POI and a compound. So when we use those two words, I mean, they're kind of getting a bit interchangeable for us, actually, from an internal perspective. The reason being is that they follow the same rules, but there's a difference of scale. So when we use POI, point of interest, which is what that translates to from our side, is it's going to be a larger space. It's going to have more challenges. It's going to have more AI. It's going to have more sandbox stuff. It'll also have more rewards. So we have multiple clues that can be found in these locations. Normal compounds that we have, these smaller locations, the barns and the farms and these kind of smaller locations, they have one clue, maybe two, depending on how we want to balance that. We're going back and forth a little bit with that right now, but these areas will have a lot more clues and a lot more loot boxes and high quality loot and stuff like
And
this.
what about the bosses?
The bosses. So these ones actually can support usually more bosses than the other smaller locations. So with these ones, in this case, you can't see it in this image right now, but we have an underground section as well to this. So each of these locations has a lot more than you can usually see on the surface. There's usually an underground part. There's usually an extra bit that's in there as well.
So it's basically a lot more rewarding to manage to survive a POI, but it's
Yeah.
a lot
Harder
more
to get
dangerous.
into,
But,
yeah.
you know, there's more like locations where the bosses can potentially spawn.
The
and-
risk versus reward is going to be a lot higher, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So in this case, if we look at this space, you can see that we have the church in the center. This is a really big focal point for us. We want you to be able to see that from a long way off. So if we back away, I'm getting stuck in a tree there. We want to make sure that we can see this structure from a long distance away. We've got the tower there. It's burning. At nighttime, you can kind of see that from a distance. Players can get up into this thing. They have a nice commanding view. So if I fight my way in there and I've taken all these risks and whatnot, I can get actually up into that tower and I can kind of keep an eye out for other people and see what's going on. If I'm doing a banish event, for example, one of my teammates can just go up there and keep an eye out and see what's going on while I stay there and defend from below. So if we just zip back up to the top view here, there's a couple of design things that we do when we're building all of these. One of them is what we call the combat donut, and the combat donut is essentially it's like a ring of challenge that goes around these central buildings. So we start with these. Players will know that this is where the boss is going to be. Like I said before, it does get randomized between all the POIs and all the compounds, so you never really know where it is unless you found the clues, or if you're lucky enough to just find it in the first case, which other players have done. It's actually completely fine. You wander into a compound, you haven't even found all of the clues, and you could just stumble across the boss. And that's yeah, and that has happened, and it's actually quite a cool dynamic when it does happen. And the idea is that we have this kind of ring around the edge of these large locations, and that ring contains the majority of our AI challenges. It contains choke points on the way in and on the way out. It contains a lot of sandbox stuff. So things that can give away my position, things like sound traps and dogs and stuff like that. So if I'm committing to get into a space like this, I'm heading on my way in to try to get into this, try to find out if the spider is there, or if I know the spider is there when I want to kill him. We have these paths that lead into these choke points, and these choke points are guarded by our specials, our AI. You can see we have a dog kennel here, so if I want to get straight into this, I have to run past this stuff. That will alert AI that are kind of feeding in this area here. You can see we've got these birds and other stuff placed, so there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration when you're going into these areas. They will be a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging than the other spaces that we have, for example. Yeah, so that's basically the anatomy of a POI for us, right? What we like to do is we like to have these perimeters around these compounds and POIs. It helps us, just to kind of contain the gameplay within them. It helps us to contain the AI within them. It also means that we can kind of funnel the players and funnel the challenges a little bit as well. We don't always do that. We like to give a little bit of variety. We like to change things up a bit. Sometimes the compounds are more open than others, right? You're going to see one in a second that will probably be a little bit more open. So we do want to kind of mix that up a little bit.
Yeah, I just noticed while you were talking that since we mentioned this this landmark thing before, that whenever you are in a compound and you want to communicate to your buddy where you are or where the others are, you basically have to give every single corner of a compound or POI a different twist. As I mentioned before, we said we had a lot of those tombstones, and they were basically surrounding the
really
entire
hard
POI. So there was this big maze of those tombstones going all the way around, and you got lost in them a lot. And now we basically opened up a lot of areas. We kept the tombstones, obviously, but even them, they sometimes have a different flavor, that you have this big kind of crypt structures around, or longer, wider roads with the big oak tree and so on. All of those little things do matter because they act as a landmark, basically. And this is what we have to pay a lot of attention to, that we do implement those kind of things into the world. So whenever you communicate to your buddy, it does not turn into a frustrating thing where you die because you couldn't tell him where you were or where the enemy was and so on.
I mean, if you're gambling with your life and you're investing in a character in a permadeath game, obviously we want to make sure that we don't drop you into a labyrinth and you're having to kind of get confused and figure out where you are, and then you're getting mobbed by AI, and it just becomes this frustration. So it's a really, really, really tricky balance for us to get the richness of this combat donut and the difficulty and the challenge and stuff like this, and also make it to the point where it's not frustrating. So we've gone back and forth on a lot of this stuff. We've taken out cover, we've added kind of more complexity here and there, and taken out things. And we have to just keep playing it over and over and over again until we find that kind of magic.
It's definitely
balance.
not done yet. There's a lot of compounds and POIs that still need to be improved when it comes to those landmarks. The leading, you should not get lost in them. You should really always understand where your options are, where you can get up and get down, and where persons potentially might hide behind and so on.
Yeah.
Also, acoustically, if you hear somebody knocking over cans, it should kind of give you a hint of where exactly he is in the compound, at least a little bit of a direction, rather than it could be potentially anywhere. So that kind of stuff is important.
You can also see, if I switch this to our kind of night debug here, you can kind of see that, at night it's a very different experience. I mean, there are some, we're seeing a little bit of bloom bug happening on some of these lights. They're a little bit brighter than they need to be right now. That's just a bug in our current build, but you can see that we try to highlight those positions where we want players to pay attention to. So obviously the biggest thing in the location is the church. That's obviously the thing you want to get to the most. But we also have, we need to highlight the locations where I can get to the underground part of the church, to the crypt. So when I'm coming in, I don't have to guess. And those lights, they should obviously be like the brightest part of the map to draw my attention to it. So I'm immediately saying, okay, that's where I need to head towards. You can see a little bit if I fly around here. So I talked about it a little bit earlier, but we do have, for example, underground areas and more spaces that kind of exist beneath and around these locations where, I think this was exactly where last time we got kind of tangled up in that concertina wire. And I believe that I actually shot one of these barrels here and it killed me, so that barrel is going to get deleted and cast into history because I never want to shoot it again. So just a little bit of catharsis there. But yeah, in general, we're working a lot on making things clearer, making things more readable, making sure that players are always able to see where they go next and understand the space as a whole. That just takes time. That takes a lot of iteration. It takes a lot of kind of back and forth and gameplay feedback and whatnot.
This is also one of the reasons why we try to keep the environment and the amount of details that we put into the game as reasonable as possible. Because imagine you create like an underground section like the one that CJ just showed you, and suddenly because of the gameplay sessions we figure out that the space is not working well, we need to move things around, we need to make the ceiling a little bit lower and the room a little bit wider. You need to push around all of those tiny little acids and buckets and spider webs or whatever. This obviously
takes a lot of time.
Takes a lot of time, which is why we don't do it at that point, at least just in the areas that we're already happy with. We basically lock down a space and then we can put the art effort into that space. And before that, it does not make much sense because iterations get more expensive the more details you put into the game.
Exactly. So we're trying to keep it relatively low key at the moment. I mean, obviously we're kind of known for that detail factory where every kind of tiny amount of detail gets kind of jammed into things, but we want to try to avoid that.
I just mentioned it because I promised people that we're going to have awesome fogs and atmosphere and stuff like this, and it's not there yet. Not everywhere, at least, People might wonder.
No. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're still working on. There's a lot of things that still need to be developed. I mean, the readability and the player leading is a big one of those because it's so nuanced as to what you look at where and the framing of things and whatnot. Like, just give you an example of this. Like we want to be able to see at a distance this tower. We want to be able to see this location from a distance. But you can see I'm picking a good spot here because in this example, while it's perfectly aligned between these two trees, you're seeing this kind of tower here. You're seeing where the church is, and that's great. But if I come from a different angle or something, it might be that it's getting blocked. If I'm coming down a road, let's see here. Well, this is a bad example because in this case, I'm not seeing the church tower. I have to kind of move into a different position, and those are things that we have to just keep going back and forth and moving things around so that when you're playing, that kind of stuff should feel invisible. It shouldn't feel like something that you notice. It should just be easy. I'm walking through the space, and the space is speaking to me in terms of where I can go and what's around that corner.
Since you're already in that corner, should we maybe show people your feature here?
Which one is that?
There.
Oh, yes, yeah. I was going to cover this a little bit when we look at the next location. So we were going to show this in our stream today. This is something that we hadn't shown before. It's a new feature. So one of our very talented guys, Ronnie, so shout out to Ronnie, made us this corn in a very, very, very short notice.
Dive in.
Yeah, and we just got it placed in, so this is kind of a really cool thing for us. It really changes the landscape.
Can you go in there again?
Yeah.
Remember when we talked about feel of unease? this is a really good example because imagine you're standing here, you have everything to lose.
Let me
you're
turn it to night because that's where it really is. Actually,
and
really cool.
suddenly you hear a zombie or you hear other players or you see their flashlight kind of shining through those cone plants, and you just have to be silent. And every time you move from one road to the other, you trigger a sound because you're going through the leaves. And this is mind games in perfection. This is really, really cool, and it's one of the nicest additions to the level recently. I really like the cornfield. Great
You can
idea.
see just how large it is and how much it sprawls. And this was something that we had a big mix, and you can remember the slides that Marcel showed you earlier about the space design that we have, where we have these kind of really big open fields and we have these kind of dense trees, and this gives us something that's in between. It gives us a nice mix where you can dive into this if you're being chased and kind of outrun other players, or if people are kind of tracking you down. But there might be other stuff in here. There might be other, enemies and things lurking around. I mean, for example, we have these birds and whatnot dotted around. So if I'm running through this and I'm seeing, as a player, this stuff flying away at a distance, well, I'm going to know that there's someone going through there. I ain't gonna, I'm not sure I want to dive in there and try to find them, but, I can at least scout and kind of look down these rows and try to see, roughly where they are. And there's a real purpose to why we put these rows in. Like, we did a few tests before, it's like kind of chaotic and there's lots of blobs and stuff like this, but what's nice is if you want to, you can just look straight down the row and you can see if there's people kind of running through and running past and cutting through stuff, but it blocks you on one particular axis, so we can actually arrange them in a way where it makes a bit more sense. So in this example, we've got a small compound over here, which we're going to look at in just a minute. And this one's actually orientated in a way where we know that the majority of players, when we play the game, we play test, is they come from this compound and they head in the direction kind of this way over here. So they tend to run through these long cornfields, and it's nice. It's also, we can cut these like little kind of open areas and we can play with it a little bit. And
yeah, and again, I can only repeat myself. The diversity that like the Louisiana offers is just amazing. There's so many cool things that you can do.
Yeah. It's so flexible. When we just started putting this stuff in, so we're going to put a few more of these in different places. We like that it gives you kind of this nice mix between super open, low grass fields and the much more dense kind of, deep bayou swamp with the, what are those trees called? The famous swamp trees?
Cypress trees.
Cypress trees, yeah, that's right. So it's a good mix between the two.
Yeah, let's look at the compound.
Yeah, I'll put this back. Doop-a-doop-doo. Yeah, the eagle eye among you will probably see from the layers here that we have experimented with some different times of days and whatnot. We're not going to show those today. We'll keep those for a later date. But we have a few other things we're testing in the works as well, so keep an eye out for that a little bit later. So this is a compound. Notice obviously that it's not circular. All of our compounds, all of our POIs and these major structures that we have, we don't want to make them standard sizes and standard shapes and whatnot. It's whatever feels more natural and whatever benefits the gameplay. We might extend things back and forth a little bit and have more open fields or more buildings or less buildings. And again, it comes down to, when we're playing, how frequently do we come across that stuff? Is it too boring to have too many barns and things like this, or is it a good mix is usually
a thing that I would like to point out before you continue, CJ. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's something right now that I don't like so much that we're currently working on, and I just wanted to point it out, is that right now it's really hard to distinguish between the roads, the fields, and the places that you can potentially hide, where the vegetation is and not from a distance. And that's due to the fact that the colors blend in together to one big mess. It's a lot of brown in there right now, and we're basically at the moment working on improving this. Tom is doing a really good job, and probably in one of the...
Tom is one of our artists, by the way,
exactly.
just in case you haven't...
And in one of the next stream, you should already, at least in some areas, see a big improvement when it comes to the language of the terrain and the vegetation, that you can clearly see where a road is, where the high grass is, where you can potentially hide in, and even on a distance, that is very important for the leading. And with leading, I mean when a player comes into a compound, he understands his options. He knows where he can go to, where he can go up to, where he can go into, where he can hide in, and where the routes are in the past and so on. And this is something that does play a really big role right now in our daily work. We're working really hard on getting that stuff in. And this is not there yet. It's going to look a lot better soon. I promise. I've seen some things that I cannot show yet.
Yeah, it's really
But
good.
it's very, very awesome. Tom is doing a really good job on that.
It adds an enormous amount to the depth of the game as well, because it's a bit, unless you point it out, sometimes it can be a bit hard to kind of notice what we're really referring to. But you know, things like the roads that we have and the terrain here, as Marcel just mentioned, is they tend to be kind of the same sort of
Value or color,
value,
yeah.
So they're not very easily distinguishable. So, for example, this road and this surface here, they kind of blend together to the point where it's like, okay.
Even with the buildings, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like the ground should be the ground and the building should be the building, and it should read better basically, and it will go in soon, I promise.
Yeah. So that's an upcoming thing. So hopefully we can show that maybe in a next stream or the stream after. We'll see. But
Yeah.
we'll
No rush.
We'll show. Yeah, so this is what we call a compound. There are 12 of these in the level right now. This one is called Stillwater Bend because it's quite close to one of the rivers we have, so it's a little settlement. It's a little bit of a hybrid between a small village, some residential stuff, and some farming going on here. So we've got obviously the fields and stuff like this. We've got these, you know, the cornfield. We've got some open kind of horse paddocks and you know, low grass fields and things like this. You can see, you know, I can see right across this. I can see if there's a player moving around it. It's very clear. Versus, you know, when I'm in the cornfield, it's a lot more difficult. Versus when I'm in things like, you know, all of the trees and shrubland around it. It's, you know, 3 different kind of gameplay setups that we have there. From a top down, again, you can see that we have this kind of what we call the combat donut. We have basically this perimeter that moves all the way around the level. You can kind of see all of these roads and stuff moving around here. They all have kind of fences and other barriers to kind of keep you focused on these choke points at each entry point. So wherever we have these kind of entries that go into the center of this compound, you can see that there's challenges. You can see some little dogs over here. We have some special AI being spawned in some of these. And the goal there is, like, you know, we just want to make sure that it's not too easy to get into this. We don't want players just kind of speed running into these each time.
Well, when you say challenge, what can be a challenge for a player, for instance?
Well, right now we focus primarily on kind of 2 areas. One is going to be either an AI challenge or a physical space challenge, or a combination of the 2. So, for example, here we have, it's a bit hard to see. I can turn the helpers on maybe. Sorry, that's the wrong one. You can see this kind of pink volume here is where we say we want to spawn a particularly difficult AI or a more kind
and
of
we'll just
hardcore.
randomly pick one of the big guys, basically.
Yeah, so this is either going to be, I think in this case, this is a meathead actually walking back and forth. Actually, you touched on an interesting thing as well that we will talk about. I want to talk about a little bit as well, which is our randomization in general. So in this case, from an AI point of view, we don't actually have this implemented into the current builds, but we're working right now, you know, our AI programmers and one of our designers, Sven, is working super hard on giving us the ability to actually just define areas where we want to have an AI spawning in. But it doesn't spawn the same AI or the same groups of AI each time. We want to
like
make
within that pink shape that you just
exactly.
Yeah.
So we went away from having a purely systemic spawning of AI. So we don't have an AI system that just kind of fills in the gaps and just kind of farts AI out into some, you know, random spawns wherever it is. What we want is a little bit of control over it, and we want to control where they spawn for this very reason, because we want to give the players a challenge. We want to make sure that these entry points actually have the right types of AI and that you're going to fight. But we also want to make sure that it's not the same experience every time. So we're saying, spawn some challenge here, get some AI in, but we'll mix it up each time, come up with some different combinations and whatnot. We'll probably do a stream in the future on the AI in general, I would imagine.
There's so much to talk about.
Yeah, that could go on for hours. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff with the AI that we can talk about. But we do have rules for those guys. Like, I think in a previous stream we showed the hellhounds, the dogs. You know, we spawn those in very specific locations. We don't spawn them necessarily within compounds, but they're usually on the roads. They're usually on more open spaces. The hives, for example, are usually in you know, these open fields and places because they're a ranged AI. They obviously need to have a place where they can, you know, attack you, and open spaces obviously match that requirement quite well. What we also have within these compounds as well is we have what we call hidden AI. We also have what we call feeders. You can see a little bit here. We've got kind of these animals. These are like dead pigs, dead creatures, dead humans in some cases. And all of these act as kind of little helpers, little hints to the AI. And they say, okay, if you're spawned near me, I'm something you can eat. So what will happen is the AI will spawn in through one of these kind of random groups that we pick, and they just go over to these things and they start eating them. And then they stop kind of caring too much about the world around them unless we stimulate them.
Another challenge that I really like, that I ran into recently, I'm not sure if it was that compound, was there was like this big field, like mud field, and there was a lot of corpses lying around, and some of them were actually still alive zombies. And like one of them just got up right in front of me and almost killed me.
Yeah.
I really like those almost like those shocking moments, and even though it's a very open space, it still is some sort of challenge, even though we don't get squeezed into a corridor.
I mean,
It's just quite nice.
when we design sandbox stuff, the best kind of features for sandbox are features that can layer with other features. The way we try to design things is we don't want to come up with specific examples of stuff that can be used one time. What we want is a system where this thing can play against this thing and can play against this thing. So as an example, we have those AI, they can feed their idle, as in, that they don't care too much about the player until the player gives them a stimulus, which could be obviously a gunshot if they get too close. But one knock-on effect from that is that we have these dogs. The dogs can get alerted by other things from player presence, and the dogs will then alert the AI, which will draw the AI towards other players. So it has to be a bit layered, basically.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I think we have one last thing I want to touch on, which is actually the replayability. So,
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
yeah, a lot of times we've mentioned things like what is the stuff that changes with each experience. So, in Hunt right now, from a high level perspective, when you start a match, we have some variables that can occur in the level. We have a variable which is the time of day. So night versus Louisiana Gold, which is what you're looking at right now. We also have number of targets that you can hunt. So we can hunt between 1 and 2 right now. We can have multiple targets that you go out and get. The type of target will be randomized as well. So spider, butcher, etc., etc. We also have randomization that will happen on a smaller scale in the level. So those are the big variables that we sort of set up at the beginning of a match. We don't know where that target is going to spawn. We don't know where the clues are going to spawn. So players have to go out and find them. It's different each time. Then you start getting into the kind of the smaller randomization that happens, and that comes from what I just described with the AI and the different types of AI that we spawn and the different groups and different challenges. And we also spawn different sandbox items. So doors and windows, for example, will spawn in kind of slightly different states. So we have open states, we have locked states, we have barricaded states, we have windows that are closed, windows that are open and kind of flapping around.
What is the difference between barricaded and closed?
One is you can only open it from one side. So if you have a door with a barricade on one side, I'm not sure if we can actually see it if I fly in.
Basically, you have to find a way in and then open it up from the inside.
Yeah.
Or,
So you can see this one has a little bar across it. So as a player, if that spawns in the barricaded state, I can either go and find a sledgehammer in the wall and kind of smash it down, or I have to go around or whatever. If there's a window, I can actually look through the window in some cases and actually operate it from a different side. So there's lots of different nuances that we can apply to that. Open doors will be slightly ajar, so from a distance you can kind of see, well, that thing's open, I can run to that and get in there quick. Same thing with windows. We want to be able to use the windows to lead players into kind of locations, so let's call them open windows. We'll have kind of the flaps open and the kind of cloth flapping about, and you can kind of see that that's an accessible thing. Then on top of that, so from the navigational point of view, the doors and windows, we also spawn in different items, different pickups, different types of loot. We actually have things like ammo and these kind of lanterns and things that I can pick up, the hammers and axes and all that kind of stuff, where I can use them as weapons or I can use them to break things down in the world. All of that will be spawned.
So when you talk about replayability, I mean the compound does not change from a layout point of view, but you never know what kind of time of day you get. Will it be dark? Will it be bright? You never know what kind of monsters will be in there. What kind of sandbox tools will be available for you.
What your target is, where it's spawned. We mentioned this. I think every stream people always ask us is, okay, you're going to be releasing initially one map. Won't that get old quickly? And we've been playing this map internally now for 8 months or so.
I still die.
Yeah, and it does still feel different every time. Now, obviously, in the future we're going to be developing new content. We're going to be making new maps. We're not going to talk too much about what those are and what kind of features will be.
Yeah,
in
we
that
focus
for
on
another time.
Louisiana. But you're right. It's also cool to have a little bit of kind of knowledge about the map that you feel like it's like something that you're familiar with, and then you can plan accordingly and so on.
Yeah.
It makes you feel cool as well when you can react to the circumstances that get introduced into the compound because of the randomization. It spices it up a little bit, but you feel a little bit more like a pro, I can assume.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we do try to kind of think of these areas, these small locations, as we think of them as small kind of multiplayer experiences or small multiplayer maps where, if you're a level designer building these things, these are going to be accessible from 360 degrees, right? It's not like I have a scripted location. I'm not coming at it from one direction each time. There's always going to be players that can come from any direction and head into this thing. So it has to work from those directions all the time.
I was hiding underneath one of those houses for like 5 minutes because my buddy was dead and there was like another team of players and I almost had no ammunition left.
Yeah.
But I managed to escape. But those are one of those situations, sometimes you're the guy who has to hide and sometimes you're the guy who hunts other people down.
Yeah, exactly. And what we try to do again with all of these kind of locations is everything here should have some relevance to the gameplay as well. Like we don't place anything that is just there for the sake of it. Like we have all of these blobs of cover and stuff here. We want players to have enough options. They should feel a bit secure in their environment too. Like having too many things to look at, having too many things to focus on, it puts stress on the player in an already stressful game. And we don't want that. We want them to have some of these kind of predictable places where AI and where players can be.
And when you, this is just a random spot, but it kind of shows you like that, like readability is really important, even though it's not perfect in that specific case. When just picture like I'm playing the game right now, and I look at the environment and I see like people approaching the compound here and have to react. I see my options. I see a red door here. I see cover objects. I could potentially hide underneath that thing and so on. And that has to basically work everywhere you are in the map. When I'm hiding here, I need to understand that there's a house here, or where's my options. That is most of the work actually goes into that, basically.
That really is the biggest amount of work.
A lot of stuff gets put in, a lot of stuff gets moved around, and most of the time we remove most of it again because it was too much or it was not clear enough and so on.
It's the eternal battle between art and design, right? Like art wants to put detail in and design wants to just have perfectly on the grid cubic simplicity everywhere, right? I mean, we often say internally that if you're making a competitive multiplayer game, we do have a competitive multiplayer experience that's going on here. Is we want players to not be playing against the level itself. The level itself is not part of that competition. It needs to provide a cool place for you to have that competition, but the level itself is not the thing you're fighting. So a lot of work to do in the future, but I think it's good. And Yannicka is telling me now that we're waffling too much and it's time to play.
You can keep going, but that just means you go home later.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, let's play a game.
All right,
Are we going to play together?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll try not to kill you.
We'll just quickly go to a short break and then we'll be back with some
See you later.
gameplay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Was that really boring? So, we're back, and so we're gonna basically quickly run through some of the gear we have just before we get going.
Look at my gun.
Marcel.
Yeah, what do you got, Marcel?
It's nice and shiny.
It's nice and shiny.
It's a shotgun. It's good. Look
Okay.
at my shotgun.
Okay, I'll turn around. Hello? Hey, man. I've also got a shotgun. And
A tiny wine.
a machete.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, that's good.
I got a sort of rifle here.
Okay.
It's also nice and shiny.
So basically what we're saying is we have 0 range. So I have a single shot shotgun. This is basically the Romero 77. So this is a hand cannon. It's pretty powerful, but it's only got a single shot, which means that I'm going to be doing a lot of running away and a lot of macheting. Yeah, then we have Fusies. Basically, we got first aid kits, we got knives, we got dynamite, we got concertinas. Alright, let's
Okay.
go. Where are we right now? So we're north middle. Let's go towards the lumber mill, maybe.
Okay. I heard a little bit of gunfight already.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember where it was from?
More towards the west, I think. It was more on the right ear.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my flashlight off for a while. Though.
I heard birds.
Yeah, that wasn't. Okay, that wasn't you.
No, I just heard birds coming from the left, southwest. Okay, what do we got here?
Right. So there's 2 inside lumber mill.
Yep, I knew it. I think we're
What?
pretty close to the others.
Really?
Yeah, but
Okay, stop. Don't move. Don't move. Don't
yeah,
move.
I don't have any long-range weapons anyways with me, so we have to. If we get into a firefight, I have to come really close.
Wow, already?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get out of here. Yeah,
I would suggest we first get some food.
I hear gunshots too.
Yeah. Not worth the risk.
Oh, shit, we got some dogs. Hold on, I'm gonna ignore them. Go around them this time.
Watch out for the dogs on the right.
Yeah. Yeah, more dogs.
Yeah, there you go. Do you really want to do this?
Yeah, why not?
Push it to the limit.
That is really okay. There's guys
Oh
right
my
here. They're
God,
right in there. Holy
We're
shit.
so going to die
Okay,
soon.
be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Like, try not to get on close too much. That's really fluky.
We got guns.
Should we fuck with
Oh,
them?
the hack is coming. We got split apart. See, just right above you. It's right above you. Do you mind if I leave you alone?
No, I don't want to be left alone, thank you. She poisoned me, she poisoned me. Okay, we have to be really careful. They can definitely hear us. I can't see shit.
They're in this building.
Alright, well,
CJ, let's go. I will go in from here.
I'm gonna blind them then.
You just blinded me, man.
There's a lot of screaming going on.
Only they're allowed to.
I can just hear them panicking.
I'm scared, CJ. I don't want to go up
Oh
there.
shit,
I
my
have no range gun at all. What am I gonna do with this?
We have. I think. I mean, we don't have a clue, but if they are here, they
You're right, we don't.
might be the reason.
Right. He who dares wins.
Okay, wait, they're outside somewhere.
Yeah, we are outside somewhere. We're coming for you.
I'm doing that. No,
Marcel, just don't tell them we have crappy short range weapons, okay?
Okay. I can't see my own butt.
Are they inside that building? Right.
Yeah,
Are you
I'm
climbing
safe.
up? Why am I talking if they can hear everything I'm
I'm going back.
saying?
okay, wait. Distraction.
There's a fusee out here. Like, they must be here.
Yeah, somewhere.
Hello? Okay, they turned on the ground of my fuck. Right, what's the point? Go, go, go. I don't like being bunched up like this, it's really bad. You see him?
Psh, 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 psh. This is so fucking ridiculous. Sorry, not supposed to say that.
I hate everything about this. Is this going to be another one of those times where we wipe within 5 minutes on the live stream because we're inept? We picked the wrong gear.
Dude, we're super exposed here.
I see one. Opposite building. He's in the large...
Yeah, take out your sniper rifle, smart eyes.
Okay. Alright, I'm going for gold. I'm
Going full on Leroy Jenkins here?
Yeah, I'm gonna Leroy Jenkins the shit out of this. You know what I'm like. You know what I'm like with explosives. Get my concertina.
That was close. Okay, they
Where are they
know
going?
where we are now.
Yeah.
Let's,
good.
do you have anything like trap-like that we can throw at them?
Yeah. I'm gonna throw this bundle of dynamite at them, but I just need to know where they are. Where were they shooting at you?
Yep, there's someone there. Did I...
Where the hell are they?
Run away.
Can you go to the side? I'm going to throw Constantino down, so we know that. Look. Exactly.
Yeah. Oops. Just healing up a little bit. You going? This is really bad. What's up? Come here. Come here.
I really think we should find police first, CJ. This is stupid.
No, this.
There, he's there.
No, 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 no.
And
No.
she's gone.
No, no.
Just saw.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, AI. Be busy. Be busy.
Don't go there.
Be busy. I just heard them swearing.
Dude,
I have no idea if they're dead.
there's no way we will ever be able to fight a boss when we
No,
get
come
rid
here, come here, shortcut. Follow me.
I can't see shit because of you. Easy.
Yeah, I got shot in the face. Can you win the match, please? Thanks.
Dude,
Okay, good. I'm up again. Just for everyone watching on the live stream, the actual the resurrection mechanics in this right now are very placeholder. So going up to someone that fast, getting them up that quickly is not what is intended right now. It's just a placeholder for us. It's too fast. It's too easy. So that will get adjusted
CJ?
over time. Hello. Yeah, let's go.
how
over
much do you like your life?
here.
Thank you. Maybe we should power on the generator on the right.
After you, buddy. I'm going to.
Wait a second.
Yeah,
I
I
really
wanna-
would like to find a clue in the console.
Yeah, we have to deal with these guys first. Though.
I forgot to play the game with all of this fun that we're having.
Okay, there's a.
Yeah, I see the flashlight, I see it, I see it.
Come here, come. Yeah, they have
Your
us covered
fusee,
like
that
hell.
fusee was like the worst place for
They're
use
right
your
opposite,
fusees.
right outside the shooting unit.
Can you turn off that light? See that one?
No, I can't. So they're outside looking at us right now. They have
Yeah,
absolute
that's
knowledge
why-
of where we are.
Make it nice and cozy in here.
And here's me with my machete and my
Manchetti.
gun. I have no range. I gotta get closer. This is just terrible. This is just terrible. I'm running outside. I'm gonna try to flank around and get behind them at least. If you can, just keep them distracted. Keep them. Just keep popping at them and
I
shooting.
will try to get a better overview. I go up and throw some stuff down.
Okay, I'm coming around. Here.
Maybe not.
Here.
That stuff now. Where are you, CJ? You made a basic.
Other side.
Okay, I'm going to.
I'm wondering.
Oh my god.
What's happening? Where are you? What's going on? Where are you? Marcel, talk to me. Marcel,
Oh god, I'm so bad at aiming.
Marcel, talk to me.
Shame on me.
Marcel. Marcel.
I cannot talk. There's somebody who's.
I will,
nothing
I will.
left.
I'll avenge you.
I'm so fucked. I got one bullet.
I have a plan. I have a plan.
I have no plan. I just have. My plan is to panic. That's what my plan is. Mm-hmm. New plan. New plan. I have a new plan. You want to know what my new plan is? Here's my new plan. What's going on? Coming.
That's what you get.
That was my plan.
That's what you get. Ah!
At least it then.
Run, 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 run.
You know, we shouldn't be allowed to do this to stream. I think it's disrespectful.
We should bring a proper rifle next time. Man.
Yeah. Well, you know, get good or go home, and I guess we're going home.
Switch in and tell us a bit about the match.
Yeah, we were bad. We picked bad gear. We picked the same gear, so we didn't have any complementary guns. We had both short-range guns. I didn't even have a sidearm. I had a machete. We came across them within the first few minutes. It's rare, but it does happen. It actually happened on the previous stream as well, which is really unfortunate. And yeah, they wrecked us,
Yep.
and rightly so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next time, clues.
Next time, clues.
Get away from humans.
Next time, bring guns. I think
Bring
this is
guns,
probably a good
do
strategy.
the job
as well.
properly.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe we should just go away for a while and think about what we've done.
Okay, we'll be right back, guys.
Hello, we're back, and hopefully better equipped this time. What do you have? I got the Dolch Precision, so this is the more accurate version of the Mauser, and I actually have something with a bit of range right now, which is the Carabiner.
I have the awesome gun, the awesome pistol.
Yeah? You can see
And I
that.
brought my beauty again.
Ah.
I haven't given up yet.
What is that, Nitro Express?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, bring in game weapons, so at least we have a chance this time.
So, where are we?
So we're due west, kind of right in the middle there. Let's see, what do we got clue-wise? Let's head towards southeast 135.
Right in
which I
front of
guess
us is
pitching.
something.
The crematorium, basically. Let's head
Yeah.
that way.
Okay, that's good.
It's very squeaky. We can scoot along here. I don't want to go through the water directly right now. We also have an exit point right over there at 225.
Let's try to not be stupid this time.
That's going to be difficult.
You look like a noob, by the way.
You look like a noob, by the way. We both look like noobs, by the way, last time we played. And very slow in the water.
Okay. Ah, okay. I will go to the green.
There's a
house
clue
first.
right in this building, by the way. Right in front of us.
What do you see?
See
Yeah,
it?
the white one.
Yeah, let's go right in there.
I will just check out if there's anything worth looting in the green one.
Okay. There's a couple of guys and they're up to no good here. Sorry,
I'll leave you alone for like 3 seconds and
sorry. Oh god, why?
should I?
Shoot, yeah, why not? It's not like you have to ask now, I've already fucking done. No. No.
It's your fault.
No.
Deal with it.
Did you find anything in there?
I can hear the clue already. It's definitely in here.
I see it. Hello. I got it. Okay. So it's not in the northeast corner, which is good because we started in the southwest corner.
Oh, okay.
that's
Should we check out the crematorium right in front of us?
So yeah, I think so. Unless I was seeing that. Okay, I think we're a bit out of range anyway, so let's go a bit over.
I heard something near-ish.
Gunshot.
Left.
Stop.
I think probably where.
Can you stop moving? Stop moving. Stop moving.
I need to find
Shots,
cover
yeah.
first, Smolensk.
Was that lightning and thunder, or was that actually someone throwing a grenade? Because it sounded a little bit grenadey.
It was lightning. And it's
Very, very
3
frightening.
kilometers away.
Dogs.
Let's go into this thing here. I don't want to create.
I can
too much of
hear
a
all
silhouette.
kinds of stuff. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's get inside there. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Behind us are the dogs. Be careful. Don't make any
Okay.
stupid things.
And there's a guy up ahead. Wow. You're a jittery little son of a...
Silent, if possible.
Okay. Oh, fuck. They must have been pulled beneath the bridge a little bit. We don't seem to be near anything, any clues.
3 zombies a day keeps the doctor away.
I hear more shots.
Just need to check if everything is reloaded because that's one of the reasons why I died last time. They're right in the crematorium.
Hear dogs as well.
And they're hungry. Why is everybody making so much noise nowadays?
Fuck! There's a fucking dude.
What is it?
There's an armored in the bushes. He jumped out at me. Pooped myself.
And he's gone.
Okay, there's a bunch of guns here. I don't like being here. This is not good. Let's go around this. I hate this. I'm also burning through my ammo, and that's not a bad thing. Let's go towards healing waters at least.
Did you check the map where it is?
Yes, east at 90-ish.
Because I trust you.
Not seeing any clues. Other than that one, maybe they're just out of
CJ, be careful.
Okay,
Jesus.
I can't help it. This guy's gonna shell fuck me. Now he's gonna shell fuck you, so you be careful. How's that advice working out for you? Okay.
Let's not. Let's. Yeah. I lost basically where we are.
We're very close to Healing Waters. It's just over this ridge.
Ah, okay. We go to the church.
Super close.
Gotcha. I thought we wanted to go to crematorium.
No. I thought there was a clue in
Yeah,
there.
let's
but we're
not
never
get
close.
into many firefights.
Let's just get on.
Because I have like 3 bullets left on my awesome rifle.
Try not to make too much noise. I want to hear out because we're quite central on the map right now. I want to try to get a bearing on anything that's happening. Do you hear anything?
I do see a clue right in front of us.
It's right in the church, though. Oh, we can go for it. I mean, why not?
Let's try to find a hole where we can go through.
There's a gap right here.
Okay, perfect. How convenient.
You go. You go first.
Yeah, there's a shape that looks like Yeah, no.
It's feeders.
It is a
Shots.
feeder, yeah.
Where was that?
Somebody might have
Shots
dropped his
real
keys.
close. What the hell? That's real close.
I hide in the bush. What do you say?
I'm hiding
Try
in a
to-
bush.
I heard birds. And shitloads of zombies right behind that wall.
Birds are coming out of the church. I just saw the flock come from the center of the church. They're coming in. They're inside this one. Come with me. Come.
Like,
Just follow me. They're right inside. Probably here. Actually.
they trigger everything.
Yeah, I've seen subtler players. Let's come to me. Marcel, come to me. There's a. I know of a little sneaky trick. Little sneak. This could end badly. This could go well.
Oh, wait. Let me know when it's safe.
I'm getting like flooded with sounds right now.
Can I come in?
Yes, by all means.
Yeah, I just want to
I see
come in.
play. There's a flashlight at the church window. They're inside the church right now. And I'm okay, I see more flashlights inside the church. I see a big white
Sorry, I
sphere.
will make a
This is Marcel.
fireball incoming.
Marcel. This is not subtle in any respect. Follow me. Come on, let's get out of here. We need to go somewhere.
There were 2 bad guys, so I hate to do it.
Yeah, and there's about 3 players probably inside this freaking building. Now they know exactly where we are. It's flickering in there. But who knows? Is that a rendering bug or is that actually gunfire? Meathead. I can see them in there. I can see them through the
They
window.
are in there. I see flashlights. Dude, we need to go down. We're gonna
Okay,
get
I got a
sniped.
plan. I got a plan. Come. Come through the squeaky gate with me. We're gonna go on an adventure together, involving guns and bullets
I
and
swapped
probably
to-
death. Oh my lord! Just run! Marcel,
Yeah.
just run!
I'm so stupid.
Oh god, this is. Why are we so fucking bad at this?
I just saved your life, buddy.
Okay, just go. There's a flare inside.
I'm gonna turn my
Okay.
Can we do this team thing again? It was quite nice.
Yeah, the team thing is quite good. Why don't you come to
Yeah.
me, because I've got a sneaky plan. Here's my sneak. Oh, healing. That's nice.
You have to say thank you.
No, I think we're gonna. Let's come up here. Come. And by the way, they probably can hear us as well. Hello. So.
I hear somebody. I don't trust the silence here.
Ah, shit! I think you're being shot at. I think
Seriously?
I don't know. Let's just defend them.
Don't turn on the bounty, the burning effect. Otherwise, everyone will come after us.
CJ? God damn it. What did I do? CJ?
They're in here.
Die.
Where did you go?
I'm doing things with guns. Okay, this is gonna be. Hello. Bye bye.
How did you get down there?
Nothing.
I'm kind of stuck in a tower here.
Don't worry, I'm just doing
I
things.
see.
Oh, hello. It's okay. I just. Oh my God! Why? Why? Is that you? Please tell me that's you. Are you shooting at me?
No, I'm not.
Okay, fine.
You have to stop running away from me for God's sake.
Me? Just stay where you are. I'll come to you. But there's enemies in here. There's all kinds of nasty shit happening. Okay, there's another guy right here. Hello. Come on. I'll take you. No. No. Oh God. Why? Why?
CJ.
I'm down.
I told
Save
you.
yourself. There's a guy in there with you. He's back towards the tower we came in.
A guy, as in a
A
human?
human being, yeah. I am down too, so do not down yourself. Be super careful.
Yeah.
He was off to the side of the church we came in on through that tower. I think I took two. There must have been another group. There must have been two groups. There's also an armored on my corpse. I'm getting teabagged by an AI. That's how humiliated
I knew
the
this
game
would
is
be a
with
good
me.
spot.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not. CJ,
Yes, sir.
high five.
I'm dead. So no high fives, actually. And I said, hey, 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 hey.
My goodness.
I said, hey. You just ran past my corpse on fire. Are you on fire right now? My corpse can see all of this. It's hilarious. All I see is you burning and running past like some.
I think what just happened now, the stop the fire and reviving kind of conflicted because you were in the same spot.
Ah, yeah.
I thought that must have been a bug or something.
I don't know, but I was down on the ground, so all I could see is up to the ceiling.
And my burning ass.
And I just hear you running past with your void, just come along and just fire. And then after that, a guy is there. and
There was a
just
couple
comes
of intense moments in there, man.
We haven't won a single round yet. We need to get good.
Yep.
It's his fault.
It's not my fault. It was an excellent plan. It's just poorly executed. I killed two. All right.
Okay. So, what did you guys think of this match? Did you feel that it went any better?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Go any better?
We had to drop on them again, and we ruined it again. Like, they were in there, they didn't know we were there. We snuck in. I saw one of them, I killed one, and then as she saw me, she shot at me, and I killed her. Then our partner was in there, I killed him. But there must have been another group, because there was another guy running around in there. And I thought there would only be two.
Your first shot was really good.
Yeah, that was super lucky. Then there was an armored running around in there, so we pulled in an AI as well accidentally, and then he just chased me down. I didn't see him. He hit me a couple of times, took my health down, and then dead. So at least I got killed by the AI and not the other players, and I don't have to live that down.
What would we have done different next?
I think we would have survived if that little bug wouldn't happen. Like, I was about to put on
That's
my
it.
fire and then I
Blame
started
bugs.
reviving you, and yes, of course.
Yeah, it's the game's fault. That's what we would do differently next time: is build the game to be less
Less buggy.
problematic.
Okay,
Right.
let's go and take another break, and then we're gonna prepare, and then we're gonna have the Q&A.
Woo.
So we got all
Alright.
your questions lined up, and we'll see you guys in a little bit.
Tschüssi. Bye-bye.
Okay, and we are back with everyone on the couch again. So you actually played against them.
Yes,
Have you encountered them or?
I think I did. We had a big shootout in the church, right, in the last match?
I wouldn't say big.
Well,
I'd say-
for me it was not very big.
I'd say it was alright.
We had to run from an armor.
You were
and then
you were lying on the ground and I was burning.
I was dead most of the
Oh,
time.
that was
and
you.
Then,
Oh, were
then,
you
and
the
then
one
my
that was
buddy
on
were
the
trying to
floor?
revive me, and then he got shot as well.
Yeah,
So
I took two of you out first. That was my little happy moment, and then I just got obliterated because again I rushed in. Again I rushed in without thinking. Again I got my ass.
There must have been 3 teams there though, because
There was
one
3
was
good
lying in
guys.
front of me on the ground.
Mm.
Then I was hiding.
Mm.
Somebody came in, shot him in the back. He was dead, and
Yeah.
I thought it was only one team and us, and I went down to revive
No,
you.
no,
but
there was
I like,
definitely more than one team.
I'm curious then because like, were you the one that was laying in the middle, exactly on like the bottom?
It
like
was on the upper floor,
Yeah, that was you.
okay,
back
okay,
entrance, and
so-
then I got. Yeah, well, I was trying to make a stand there, but I couldn't see anyone, and then somehow I got, well, shotgun from behind or something.
Well, what was super.
And then Turgut was running around.
We got really lucky because we went to the church because we wanted to get the clue there, and we didn't hear much. We heard some gunshots, but we couldn't place them. Then we saw a bunch of birds flying off from the church, so we went in there. But what was really weird is we got onto the top of this kind of the graves and stuff there, and we were looking into the church, and we could see people running around inside the church. So we thought, okay, we probably have not been noticed yet. And then, well, actually, that's wrong because you threw a fire bottle, blew up an explosive barrel. I ran the other way, blew up an explosive barrel, killed a guy,
CJ,
2 gunshots, and
it's
then
called
we.
it's
Yeah.
called tactics.
Exactly. It was
No.
just
I mean,
distracting tactics.
I do have to say that you guys have the tendency to run away, but like I do think that's something that you do in general. That you're like, I'm just gonna go
No, I'm
sneak
hitting
around.
run. I'm always gonna hit and run. Like I always want to be in the
Jenkins.
place where if I shoot something, it's always like I try to go to a different position. But
Yeah.
that might be construed as cowardice.
I mean,
Maybe
it
it
is a
is.
lot harder because it was a lot harder for you to get
Well, it's
to
a
him
valid
because
tactic.
I know you
Mm.
were constantly saying like, "Where are you?" You're just running away
Yeah,
from me the whole time.
That was funny. I was trying to stand. I'm a stealth
One
gamer.
speed, one speed.
One speed, yeah.
I mean,
I just heard a lot of explosions and sounds and
Yeah.
things going on and off.
I mean, to be honest with you, like in that situation, we should have had that. That should have been easy going because it looked like we were coming in from a direction they weren't prepared for because they just randomly were walking in one direction. I don't know whether they knew that we were there or not. And we got lucky with that first kill. The second kill was just, I don't know, I guess pretty much lucky again. Third kill was just bad. Like not knowing where they were, not expecting a second team there. I mean, that was just bad on our part,
Mm.
I think. But
Yeah,
fun.
we could have guessed it that there are more than one other team because we came from the north and we were attracted by bomb fire. Well, probably
Yeah.
that's what you did.
I created
You
a
created
decent
that
fireball
exactly.
yes, in order to kill.
So we got
3.
attracted to the church from that, but yeah, there were more shots. So
Mm.
The thing that's a bit
Yeah,
weird
sure.
at the moment is we have a bug in this build that all the hunters have the same character model, and you can build your hunter in the meta, and you can customize the guy, and you have all these different things. Like we were doing this before we started
well,
streaming.
I mean, you can't customize the appearance of the guy.
No, but the weapons and the gear
yeah,
and stuff. we
just
have.
clarify from the
Right,
beginning.
but we
please.
picked a guy, and we were quite happy that one of them kind of looked like some sort of hobo guy because we gave him a pistol with a knife. Like, we just tried to give him as many knives as possible. He had this big beard and like this horrible, like dirty kind of ratty jacket. And then we got into the game, and right now, they're all the same. So hopefully next stream we can show off a bit more of the variety of stuff. So
Also, nice buttons talking about
yeah,
customization.
these represent my failings in this game so far with all the
1, 2,
streams.
3, 4.
So,
I thought they're trophies you
Yeah, yeah.
you pile up.
no, these are not trophies. These are shame.
Okay, trophies
Okay.
of shame.
So let's get to some of the questions because we got a bunch of questions. So I hope you're all ready for those. Let's start with question number 1. Are you planning to do other countries' locations depending on the success of the game? London, Hong Kong, Berlin,
Yeah,
etc.
we cannot talk about any other locations at the moment. This is something that is not on the plate right now. You're focusing entirely on Louisiana. There's so much work left that we have to do. Fleshing it out, streamlining it, making more fun, getting rid of all of the annoying things. So this is nothing that we can talk about at the moment.
Okay. How do story elements work with the world itself? Do you find lore as you play mostly, or will there be cutscenes and such that fill in a lot of what's happening?
No cutscenes. No, we don't. So this game we're a competitive multiplayer game. At our heart, we don't have big, heavy, story-driven things. We don't have cutscenes. We don't have that lore and stuff like this. When it comes to things like lore within the world and storytelling through like the kind of locations and the props and stuff and the kind of the world falling apart and the visual kind of things, then that's something we definitely want to have more of. Maybe that's more of an art related.
Yeah,
question.
and also like the
narrative.
the narrative team is writing a lot of backstory and so on in order. This is the foundation. This also helps us to create art because we know where stuff comes from and so on. And they put a lot of things together that you will have access to in the game. But this is something that is worth doing another stream of about. And,
No, totally. But
The
it really
actual,
helps. Like
Yeah.
all this, let's say, the background check we can do
Yeah.
and really dive deep into that.
everything
like,
is there
okay,
for a purpose. I mean,
It really helps us to design the sounds as
Yeah.
well. It's like you know what it's originally sounded like.
Yeah.
I mean, Marcel mentioned it earlier when we were talking about the wall stuff. Is we have a whole big list and plan and vision for what we want to see in the world, and that's something that is, it's being worked on right now. It's being added. We have to get the core in. We have to get the big beats in. We have to get the big structures in, and then we can kind of let loose with all that kind of stuff, the deeper storytelling and things like that. Like I said, we're not a story-driven game, but we do want to give richness to the world, so that will come over time.
Okay. Weather effects, fog, heavy rain, snow, super windy, drowning, etc. sound like a neat feature. Are there any plans
I know
for
for a
this?
fact that audio absolutely love it when we add rain.
Yeah.
Like, it's not at all a difficult thing for you guys to...
Well, rain is always difficult in the sense of its white noise. It covers a lot of the soundscape, right? You cannot hear so clearly anymore, but at the same time, it is a nice effect. We did explore it a little bit in the past, and we had other games doing and featuring that as well. At the moment, I think it's a joint effort, right? We need the level design has to change it. Basically the ground changes, right?
Yeah,
So
it
your
makes a big
footstep
difference, I think.
changes. So everything has to come together to really bring weather. It needs a gameplay purpose, I think. Just to have it on as sugar on top is not enough.
But
I
in
think.
our systemic world, it would immediately change the way you play the game.
Totally.
Because you rely a lot on your senses, you need to listen a lot, and it basically distracts that. It puts white noise on top of everything.
Exactly.
As you said,
You can't hear as clearly. Maybe the visuals are cluttered as well.
I mean, what an interesting take might be is we have these two times of days. We have like a night one, which is a low draw distance. We have a day, which is a high draw distance, and we can do things such as at night when you're having that thunderstorm, basically, your visual sense is decreased, but your audio sense is still good. And during the day, we can kind of flip that where we have the thunderstorm or we have the rain and wind, where your audio sense is getting decreased, but your visual ability is higher. In the game we have right now, we have a dry thunderstorm, which is basically thunder and lightning. You can see it in the streams every now and then. And we have even experimented with things like when that thunder happens, and you can predict, because you see the lightning, then a few seconds later the thunder happens. We actually had a moment where we prototyped suppressing all of our AI behavior for 1 second or 2 seconds when that, so players could actually line up shots and the AI wouldn't be able to hear it when a thunderclap happened. Same thing for other players, they wouldn't be able to hear when that moment was triggered, for example. So we got some ideas for that.
But that's what I mean. It needs some more gameplay relevance than
it can't just be an aesthetic thing, right? Yeah.
With regards to random spawnings, how are you going to balance distance to closest objective as well as the percentage of the boss spawning near spawn players? Or are you not worried about that because of the banishing and kill stealing mechanic?
That's a mouthful. I have to try to understand.
Sorry. So I assume what he's trying to say, like, how do we calculate like the distance between players and, for example, boss? Like, does this boss spawn in from the start already, even though you're close, or?
I see. Okay.
basically preventing what happened to us when we spawned right
then you
next to
stumble.
Yeah,
across the
exactly.
boss.
There are things that we want to do with regard to spawn checks. It gets a bit complicated and it gets a bit in depth, and it also gets into some territory where we're talking about features that we don't really necessarily want to talk about just yet, but that's something that's on our mind, especially when it comes to, like, I spawn and I'm right next to a boss, and it's a bit more in depth because that potentially can be a cool thing. It can actually be an interesting event, because if you're starting the game early and you're lucky enough, that one situation where you get close to that thing, if you start killing it and you start the banish, every other player knows that event has happened. They're not going to go and find clues. They're all going to come to your position, and they're all going to want to save that time and just completely wipe you out. So there's some interesting kind of, relationships that can happen with spawning AI close to you quickly. It's a bit of it gets into quite a bigger topic, actually. So, but it's something we're playtesting. Yeah.
And it's fun. It's like, you stumble across the boss. I mean, it really changes your game plan. Maybe let's cycle this, go here, and suddenly, boom.
I would
it just
not
happens.
like it, actually, if the game, every time we played it, was you spawn, you always get the same 3 clues, you always kind of about the same thing, you get the same thing.
Makes it boring.
It has to be a bit dynamic, it has to change.
It's good that there's variation.
I mean, if you compare our 2 sessions, besides the fact that we always died, it was pretty much a pretty unique experience, to be honest. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
How do the extract points? The point you need to go after banishing. I mean, yes. How do they? How are they designed regarding location and the correlation towards fair play? So
that's another one I'm going to have to read. To understand.
There are some long questions. I assume that they were wanting to try and say, like, where, like, because someone mentioned before, and it was actually interesting, like, could it be that the spawn points or extraction points are not shown yet
Until
the banishing starts, or what if multiple people are on the same point, like, how...
We have, right now, the way that the game handles it is a kind of basic way. So when the mission starts, those locations are predefined. They were predefined for the reason that we wanted players to be able to kind of understand a little bit. They can plan a little bit ahead, but they can see in the map, in the briefing beforehand, they can see roughly where the things are. They can actually have a strategy before they come into things. However, we've actually been discussing lately about the concept of having these spawn in after the banish and after the events have happened, and that they would even be a little bit closer to those locations, but maybe we play with the timing a little bit of how long it takes you to extract and things like this. That is it's a piece of the balance puzzle and a piece of the kind of core loop of the game that we're still adjusting a little bit. We're still trying to find the right ground for that. And yeah, at the moment we don't have a clear answer to give right now. Today we're still experimenting with some stuff. But yeah, hopefully we'll give a bit more information about that when we know a bit more about it.
Exactly. Are there moving environmental pieces, like a train or a carriage from the time period running through the map at some point?
Not in this map, but we never say never to cool stuff.
Yeah, it seems
I
like,
like moving
there's
Yeah.
like an
Moving
old
pieces.
steam train like coming by, like running through. I mean, it would be hard in the swamp, but
I hope that doesn't sound like a dismissive answer, actually, but I mean, there is elements like that we are interested in doing.
But not at
we
the
don't have them
moment.
presently because we're focusing on other things, but you know, if that's something that adds depth to the map, enriches the gameplay, then we'll always entertain that stuff.
This is also a difficult question. I'll try to make them sound as logic as possible. Does
Right.
environmental kills, like for example, is it possible with an environment to knock over a piece of wood that creates a bridge over a gap that will affect the map?
There is. I mean, we recently implemented it, right? The door system and everything, which kind of goes a little bit in that direction. You can, when you kick open a door and there's a zombie behind it, you will knock him over and kill him, basically. So there are those things that are basically tied into the
We're drip feeding them into the game right now. That
exactly.
Kind of stuff.
I mean, it's not a large log or whatever. You do not chop trees and then they fall on a zombie and they die.
I mean, with this one, I think he's also trying to ask.
who gets the kill, right? In the end as well.
Are there big kind of like architectural objects that can be like, can you break a bridge and things collapse? Can you kind of knock a tree down and climb across it? At one point, we had things prototyped that were like, you know, actually pickable ladders. You could pick up a ladder and just carry it around, place it dynamically, and you can imagine the kinds of things that fucked up in the level. Like players would just can go anywhere. Like they could carry these ladders, you could just put them anywhere and climb up them. Cool feature, but it broke a lot of stuff. Will there be things that we can do in the levels to dynamically change things a little bit, breakable bridges and stuff? Again, we don't have that in the game currently, but that's something that I think in the future we can really discuss.
I hear a lot of people wanting to break a lot of things.
I like breakability too. In
Light
especially-
entire cornfields on fire, break bridges, buildings.
Especially if you have a kind of game where you have this multiplayer thing and you know people are bunkered inside a building, you want to kind of breach into it, kind of go inside and do something with it. We talked a couple of times about having pre-built, predefined places you can do that. Systemic is a bit more difficult because it has a ton of overlapping things in the game from a technical point of view, but yeah, that stuff's cool.
Okay. What is the aggro range of things that will chase you around? Can you drag hordes into sections of the map or to other players?
Right now, the AI does actually have a limit of how far they will chase you. I can't tell you what number that limit actually is, but the goal is that no, we don't want kiting of AI around the level. It's it can be kind of fun. There's there are moments where that could be kind of fun, but we would rather not. Especially because if you go into a compound, you pull all the AI out. What happens then? The compound is empty. The other team comes. It's kind of a weird thing. Where do those AI go? They just drift off. It's bad for performance. It's bad for other things.
Okay. Then let's do one more question because I know someone has to leave us soon. Let me think. Is it planned to add dynamic weather change? It would be extremely cool at night in the fog, or at night in the swamp if the fog punch. It's.
Well,
Not sure if that's
Similar
correct
like
lancing,
we
but-
discussed in the last question. It'll be cool to have with the the stuff we experiment with the gunshot covering. So, and of course having a game changing moment like fog rolls in or rain starts. But that's I think even a step further on how dynamic the world
I
needs
mean,
to be. And
I
I think
would
it
love
caused
it, but yeah.
I think it caused a lot of trouble just thinking about it. I would rather focus on the game as is with a one setting and make that really good.
I think that
And then it's eventually we get the time to
There was
do it.
one short question that I want to answer because I did think that was interesting. Can you mess with all the lighting? Like, can you douse every light that you pick up, or
the majority of lights that you see, those lanterns, the ones that are placed around, if you see a lantern, you can turn it on and off.
All of the
Okay.
man-made lights.
All of the
basically.
man-made lights, yeah. Fire's not so much, but
Yeah.
like if there's a lantern or something, you can turn it on and off. Yeah.
Okay, then I want to thank you guys for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
It was a good. I'm sad that you guys died so fast and so soon.
Yeah, we're sad too because it makes us look like really, really shitty players.
I mean, you're
And
in
we
control
are.
of yourself. It's not that we're doing it. But thank you guys so much for watching. We will post a VOD live later and also on YouTube. The humming sound will also be with title on the YouTube tomorrow. And yeah, and next week we're going to talk about progression and ranking. So I hope to see you guys next week.
See ya.
Until then,
Yeah.
bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.